Ever get that feeling like, uh, someone's expertly kind of steered you into saying yes,
Mm-hmm.
when really all you want to do is just shout no?
Oh, yeah,
Well, I think we've all been there.
definitely.
And today, we're going on a deep dive into this fascinating world of one of those sneaky persuasion tactics.
Yes,
And this one is called door in the face.
that's right.
And trust me, you've encountered this
Oh,
before,
you definitely have.
whether you realize it or not.
And what I find so fascinating about this technique
Yeah.
is that it really hinges on some very powerful psychological principles, and
Mm.
it's really surprising how effective it can be in influencing our decision making.
So let's break this down. What exactly is door in the face?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds kind of, well, a little aggressive, right? Like slamming a door in someone's face.
Yeah, it does have that kind of forceful imagery to it. But really it's all about this very carefully constructed two-step process.
Hmm.
So picture this, right? You're asked for this outrageously large favor, something so outlandish
Right.
that you can't possibly agree to it.
Uh-huh.
That's the door slam part.
Okay.
But then after you've, kind of rejected that,
Right.
a smaller, much more reasonable request
Yeah.
follows right on its heels. And suddenly this smaller request seems almost agreeable.
Oh, okay. So is it kind of like, like when you're maybe at a street market or something
Yes.
and the vendor starts out with a ridiculously high price
Exactly.
because they know you're going to try to haggle them down.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. They
Yeah.
know you're going to haggle, and that's exactly what they want you to do. They
But,
want to engage you in that process.
okay.
But that's just the surface, right?
Right.
The psychology behind this is what's really intriguing.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit.
So, one of the key elements here is reciprocity. We, as humans, we're just wired to want to return favors, to
Mhm.
reciprocate.
Right.
And this holds true even if the initial favor was something that we completely rejected.
Interesting.
Like, for instance, Dr. Robert Cialdini, who's done a lot of really amazing research in this area,
Yeah.
he found in one of his studies that people were twice as likely to agree to chaperone juvenile delinquents to the zoo,
Wow.
but only after they were first asked to volunteer at a youth detention center
Oh my.
for 2 hours a week
Oh no.
for 2 years.
Nobody's going to say yes to that.
Exactly. So no one said yes to that,
Right.
but then they were much more likely to say yes to the smaller request.
Wow, that's a really powerful example.
Yeah.
So it sounds like by refusing that initial huge request,
Uh-huh.
we almost feel like obligated to concede to something smaller.
That's exactly it. It kind of triggers this sense of maybe obligation or even a little bit of guilt.
Okay.
Like we should give a little something
Right.
since they've lowered their expectations.
Right.
Right.
Right, right.
And that leads to the second part of this, the perceived compromise.
Mm.
See, we see that smaller request as a concession from the other side.
Okay.
So it makes it seem much more reasonable.
It's like they're doing us a favor by lowering their expectations.
Exactly.
Even though we know now it was probably their plan all along.
Exactly.
So if we kind of step back and recognize this tactic as it's happening,
yeah.
does that then make it less effective?
Absolutely. Awareness is key here. It's like having this new lens to look through to really see these interactions for what they are. Recognizing door in the face really empowers you to make more informed choices rather than just simply reacting
Right.
to whatever the persuader is using, their cues.
Right, right.
So awareness is powerful.
So where do we see door in the face
Yeah.
playing out in the real world? I mean, other than that amazing example you just gave,
Yeah.
like what are some other areas?
Well, I think a really common one is charity fundraising. Think about it. They often start with that initial ask for a very significant donation,
Yeah.
knowing full well that most people are probably going to say no.
Right.
But then what happens? They follow up with, well, could you give a smaller amount?
Yeah, and it makes sense now why those smaller donations
That's
seem
right.
more appealing after that initial sticker shock.
Exactly. Exactly.
Are there other areas where this tactic pops up?
Oh, absolutely. Negotiations are just rife with door in the face.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. Someone comes in with this extreme opening demand.
Huh.
It might be totally unrealistic,
Right.
but what they're doing is they're setting a high anchor.
Hmm.
And then they can concede, quote unquote,
Right.
to a more favorable outcome that still works to their advantage.
But isn't there a risk there that starting with such an outlandish demand could backfire?
Oh, for sure.
Like, what if the other party just says, "Forget this, I'm out of here"?
Yeah, that's a valid point. Like any tool, it needs to be used strategically.
Right.
I mean, an overly aggressive opening
Yeah.
could definitely damage a relationship or hurt the negotiation.
So how can our listener apply this knowledge
Yeah.
in their own lives?
Yeah.
I mean, what can they do?
I think the biggest thing is to just pause when you're faced with one of those seemingly outrageous requests.
Yeah.
You know, take a moment and ask yourself, is this the door slam? Or
Uh-huh.
are they setting me up for a smaller ask down the line?
Mhm.
And just by recognizing the tactic, you're
Yeah.
much less likely to be swayed by it.
It's kind of like being aware of, a marketing ploy.
Yes.
Once you see it,
You see right through it.
it loses its power over you.
Precisely.
Mhm.
Now, I'd like to leave you with a question to think about.
Okay.
We've talked about everyday scenarios, negotiations, asking for favors,
Right.
but where else might door in the face be at work?
Hmm.
Think about, the news you consume, political discourse,
Ah.
even your social media feeds.
Hmm.
How might this technique be subtly, maybe even unconsciously,
Yeah.
shaping your perceptions and ultimately your choices? Think about it.
Lots to think about. Until next time.
See you then.